I just received a chilling voice message from my daughter, and it made everything instantly clear. You are not coming with us to New York. My husband doesn't want to see you. After I had spent so much of my hard-earned money to pay for that entire vacation, I quietly logged onto the computer and canceled every single reservation. My family's expectations had finally pushed past what my own sense of fairness and justice could handle. The moment they arrived at the hotel in New York, the chaos began. My phone started lighting up. 69 missed calls flashed on the screen, and that was only the very first wave of their reaction. Before we continue this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The morning light was filtering softly through my kitchen window, catching the slow rise of steam from my coffee mug. It was January 15th. The weather outside was cold, but the chill settling inside my own chest felt even colder. Honestly, I'd been awake since 5 in the morning, sitting right here at the table, staring at my laptop screen. The Booking.com website was glowing brightly, the cursor blinking patiently in the space meant for my credit card number. I was booking 3 tickets to New York, a round trip from Seattle scheduled for April 10th. The hotel was the Grand Excelsior, right in the middle of Times Square, for a total of 7 nights. My fingers hesitated for a moment over the keyboard. The cost was $5,200. This amount was most of my January pension, check plus a significant chunk of the savings I had been setting aside. For what? I'd asked myself that question so many times before. Maybe I was doing this for moments like last Christmas, when my son-in-law, Michael, barely acknowledged my presence across the dinner table. Maybe I was doing it because of the tight, forced smile Emily gave me when I arrived, the one that seemed to suggest she wished I'd sent a bigger check instead of showing up at all. Outside my window, the river reflected the dull, gray clouds hanging overhead. It's been 10 years since Martha died. 10 years of me constantly trying to be enough, trying to fill the void for our daughter. Despite my doubts, I typed the numbers in anyway. I pressed the confirm button and watched the confirmation email land in my inbox just 30 seconds later. My phone buzzed before I could even manage to close the laptop. It was Emily. I felt that old familiar rush of nerves, a mix of excitement and dread. "Dad!" Her voice came through, bright and sharp. "I just got the notification. Oh my goodness, you actually did it." "Of course I did," I said. The coffee in my mug had long since gone lukewarm. "I told you I would." "You're the absolute best," she exclaimed. "Michael and I were just saying we can't wait for this trip. New York in the spring. Can you imagine? We'll see shows, visit all the museums, everything." Something in her happy tone reminded me of her when she was 7, tearing through wrapping paper on Christmas morning before she learned how to measure love by the dollar amount of the gifts. I allowed myself a genuine smile. "Glad I could help, honey." Then, a silence stretched between us. I could distinctly hear her change her breathing. "Actually, Dad, there's one tiny little thing." Her voice shifted, taking on that careful, calculating edge I had learned to recognize so well over the years. "Michael mentioned we'll definitely need extra money for the excursions and those nice dinners. You know how incredibly expensive the city is. Could you maybe just transfer another $1,500, just to be safe?" The kitchen suddenly seemed to shrink around me. My hand instinctively tightened around the phone. "Emily, I have already paid for absolutely everything. The flights, the hotel, it's all completely covered," I explained. "That's the budget, and that's the deal." "But Dad, that's what we agreed on," I insisted, my voice calm and steady, even though my jaw was aching from clenching my teeth. "The booking is done. You'll have a wonderful time." Her heavy sigh cracked clearly through the phone speaker. "Fine. I guess we'll just have to make it work somehow. Thanks for the tickets anyway." The call ended abruptly. There was no goodbye, Just dead air where her voice had been moments before. I sat there, the phone quickly cooling in my palm, and stared at the family photos hanging on the wall. There was Emily on her wedding day, absolutely radiant, with Michael's arms wrapped tightly around her waist. Both of them were looking slightly past the camera, past me, towards some future I just couldn't see myself in. Another photo showed Emily's college graduation. I had paid for that too. The car she drives today? My money bought it. The down payment on their house in Seattle? That was also mine. The coffee maker gurgled, starting a fresh pot I hadn't even asked for. I must have hit the button accidentally. I watched the dark liquid fill the carafe, and I felt a similar process happening inside my own chest. Not anger, not yet. Just something quieter. Something that had been building up for years, drop by painful drop. Like this coffee that no one would end up drinking. I pulled up the confirmation email one more time. 3 passengers: James Anderson, Emily Johnson, Michael Johnson. Departure: April 10th. Return: April 17th. 2 months away. 2 months of planning, packing, and anticipation. 2 months of me pretending this trip would somehow magically fix the distance between us, hoping it would bridge the gap that only seemed to get wider, no matter how much money I poured into trying to close it. The river outside briefly caught a break in the clouds and turned a quick flash of silver. I had proposed to Martha by that very river 37 years ago. She would have known exactly what to say to Emily, how to handle this constant demand. She always did. But Martha was gone, and I was here, all alone, drinking cold coffee and watching confirmation screens load up. My phone remained silent on the table. No simple thank you text, no follow-up call, just the sharp echo of that disappointed sigh because I wouldn't give more. I picked up my mug and carried it over to the sink. Outside, a crow landed on the fence, a stark black shape against the white snow. It tilted its head and seemed to look straight at me through the window glass. 2 months passed by quickly, like sugar dissolving in hot water. I paid their March utility bill without being asked. I transferred money for Emily's car insurance when she texted a single, unadorned sentence. Due date coming up. There was no please, and no thank you afterward. Just read receipts and silence. March 20th arrived, wrapped in the evening cold. I had spent the entire day organizing my suitcase, folding my shirts with the military precision Martha used to playfully tease me about. 3 weeks until departure. The thought sat heavily in my stomach, like undigested food. My living room had that hollow, empty quality houses get when they're expecting people who might not show up. The phone sat on the coffee table, its screen dark. I had just finally settled into my chair, considering what to make for dinner, when the screen suddenly lit up. A notification. Voice message from Emily. I reached for it slowly, cautiously, as if reaching for something that might burn me. I pressed play. Dad. Her voice filled the room, sounding flatter and colder than I had ever heard it before. There was no greeting, no warmth whatsoever. You're not flying with us to New York. My husband doesn't want to see you. I know you paid for everything, but it's better this way. We'll still go, obviously, just without you. Sorry. The message ended. 15 seconds. That short message completely rewrote my reality. I played it again, and again. Her words remained exactly the same. My husband doesn't want to see you. Not we think, or maybe it's best. Michael didn't want me there, and Emily had agreed to it without a single fight. Sorry. It was tacked on at the very end like an afterthought, like apologizing for forgetting to buy milk. My fingers went numb. The phone nearly slipped right out of my hand. I stood up, sat down, and then stood up again. The room seemed to tilt slightly, or maybe it was just me. How long had I been standing in the same spot? The window now showed blackness outside, though I couldn't remember the sun ever setting. My reflection stared back from the dark glass. An old man with gray hair and completely confused eyes, holding a phone as if staring hard enough at it would somehow make it explain itself. The voice message remained in my inbox, a small blue bubble containing emotional dynamite. I desperately wanted to delete it. I also wanted to save it forever. I wanted to call her back immediately and ask what I had done, what I had said, or what I had failed to be for her. But my throat simply closed up around those questions before they could form into actual words. I remembered the car, a 3-year-old Honda Civic. I had co-signed the loan because their credit wasn't good enough back then. I still quietly made half the payments whenever they fell short. The down payment on their house in Seattle? That was $12,000 pulled directly from my retirement fund. That money was Martha's life insurance payout. I had given it freely to them, constantly telling myself that I was investing it in my daughter's future. This voice message, those 15 seconds of rejection, was the return I got on that investment. My legs mechanically carried me to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water, then completely forgot to drink it. The glass sat there on the counter, gathering condensation while I paced between the rooms like a caged animal, searching for exits that simply didn't exist. Deep inside my chest, beneath the initial shock, a powerful new feeling started to stir. It felt like ice cracking on a frozen lake, that sharp, warning sound right before everything shatters apart. For 10 years, I had been thankful that Emily even still spoke to me at all, that she still allowed me to be a part of her life, even if only from a distance. I had paid and paid and paid for the mere privilege of being tolerated. My husband doesn't want to see you. The words kept playing on a devastating loop in my mind. They weren't her words, they were Michael's, but she was the one who delivered them. And that, I realized, made them hers too. She had looked at that amazing trip, those expensive tickets I had purchased, the nice hotel I had reserved, and decided that I was completely disposable. The money could stay. I could go. I picked up my phone again, opened my email, and found the Booking.com confirmation and the airline receipts. 3 passengers, $5,200. I checked the cancellation policy. A full refund, minus a small $200 fee, if canceled more than 14 days before departure. We were still 3 weeks away from April 10th. Plenty of time. My hand shook slightly as I set the phone back down. It wasn't shaking from fear, but from something that felt dangerously close to absolute clarity. I had been asking myself the wrong questions for all these years. It wasn't, how can I be a better father? Or what more can I possibly give? The correct question was much simpler, much cleaner. What happens when I stop? The clock on the wall ticked past 9 p.m. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. I stood in my living room, surrounded by photos of a family that clearly didn't want me in their picture anymore. And I felt a profound shift. It was like a bridge burning, like a door slamming shut, like finally waking up from a long sleep. Morning came too bright, too early. I hadn't slept at all, just laid in bed watching the ceiling shadows move, running calculations in my head. At 6 a.m., I gave up pretending and went to my office. The computer hummed quietly as it came to life. My email inbox glowed with unread messages, mostly junk. A few bills. Nothing from Emily. Of course not. She had said all she needed to say. I opened the airline website first, logged into my account, and found the booking. 3 tickets stared back at me from the screen, the names listed in neat rows. My cursor hovered directly over the cancel reservation button. 1 click. That was all it would take. I thought about calling her, about trying to explain, about asking if she truly understood what she had done, what she was asking me to accept. But I had spent 10 long years explaining, asking, and trying to make her see me as something more than a checkbook with legs. This time, I decided my actions would speak for themselves. I clicked. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel this reservation? Yes, I was sure. More sure than I had been about anything in years. The confirmation took just 3 seconds. Cancelled. Refund processing. $5,000 minus the $200 cancellation fee. It was expected to return within 5 to 7 business days. Next, the hotel. I dialed the number from the confirmation email. A woman answered, her voice professionally cheerful. Grand Excelsior, how may I assist you? I need to cancel a reservation, I said. My voice sounded strange, too calm, like it belonged to someone else entirely. The name is James Anderson, checking in April 10th. Keys clicked in the background. I see it here, Mr. Anderson. May I ask the reason for cancellation? Change of plans. Simple. True. None of her business beyond that. I understand. The cancellation will incur a one-night room charge, approximately $300. The remainder will be refunded to your original payment method within 10 business days. Would you like to proceed? Yes. More clicking. All set, Mr. Anderson. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No. Thank you. I hung up and slowly sat back in my chair. The office somehow felt larger, as if the walls had moved outward when I wasn't looking. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust motes as they floated in lazy, mesmerizing patterns in the air. My phone sat silently on the desk. No calls, no messages. Emily didn't know yet. She wouldn't know until they showed up at the airport with all their luggage and expectations, and the credit card authorization I provided no longer existed. April 10th was 3 weeks away. 21 days for them to make their plans, pack their bags, and arrange time off work. 21 days of anticipation that would end abruptly at a ticket counter. A confused agent would tell them there was no reservation under that name. Sorry, there must be some mistake. Except it wouldn't be a mistake. It would be a choice. My choice, for once. And it wasn't made out of anger or revenge. It was just simple logic. They didn't want me on the trip? Fine. They could take the trip without my money too. Fair was fair. I pulled up my bank account. The refunds wouldn't fully process for days, but I could see the pending transactions. $5,000 minus fees was coming back. Money that wouldn't go to ungrateful children who only saw me as an obligation. Money I could spend on myself or save, or even burn in the fireplace for all it mattered. It was mine again. The hotel confirmation email arrived. Your reservation has been canceled. I saved it immediately to a folder I named Documentation. Just in case. My coffee had gone cold again. The 3rd morning in a row. I didn't bother reheating it. I just sat there, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not quite peace, and not satisfaction either. It was something simpler. The feeling of standing up after kneeling too long. That rush of blood and pins and needles mixed with relief. I wondered when they would notice. Who would check the reservation first? Emily or Michael? Would they call the airline? Demand to know what happened? Would they call me? The thought should have frightened me. Instead, I felt curious and strangely distant, like watching a movie I'd already seen, just waiting for the actors to hit their marks. My phone remained silent. I picked it up anyway and scrolled through old messages. Years of one-word responses, urgent requests for money, complaints about expenses. Not a single, "How are you?" that wasn't immediately followed by a favor. Not one, "I love you," without obvious strings attached. I deleted Emily's voice message. 15 seconds of rejection. Gone with a swipe of my thumb. Then, I blocked her number and Michael's. Clean breaks heal faster than ragged ones. Martha had told me that once after I cut my hand in the garage. She'd been right then. Maybe she would be right now, too. The computer screen dimmed to save power. I let it go dark. Outside, clouds gathered over the river, promising rain. I had lived in this house for 30 years. I raised a daughter here, and I buried a wife here. It was time to figure out what came next, now that I was no longer living for people who clearly didn't want me around. 3 weeks until they found out. I had time to prepare, to practice what I would say if they called, assuming I unblocked their numbers, and to decide if I even wanted to answer at all. For now, I had my quiet office, my cooling coffee, my river view, and $5,000 on its way back to me. That felt like enough. Sunlight filtered through my living room curtains the next afternoon, casting long shadows across the carpet. I had spent the previous night wide awake, checking my bank account every hour, watching for the refund notifications. They came through around 3 a.m., pending deposits, the money returning home. Now, sitting comfortably in my armchair with a cup of tea cooling in my hands, I felt something unfamiliar finally settle deep into my bones. Not quite peace. It was lighter than that, like finally setting down a piece of heavy luggage I had been carrying for years without ever truly realizing the enormous weight. The river outside my window moved steadily and grayly. It was the same view I'd had for 30 years. The same house where Emily learned to walk, where Martha and I raised our daughter to believe that family meant something. That investment had certainly yielded returns, but not the ones I'd anticipated. A child who measured my worth in wire transfers and saw my presence as a mere inconvenience. I set the cooling tea down, untouched, and opened the drawer in the side table. I pulled out an old photo album. There was Emily at her graduation, cap and gown on, diploma held high, and me standing beside her, my face split wide with pride. I had paid every single tuition bill, every textbook, and handled every late-night emergency when her car broke down or her laptop died a week before finals. The next photo was her wedding. Emily in white lace, Michael in his rented tux. I had walked her down the aisle, handed her over to a man who barely acknowledged my existence, and paid for half the reception because of tradition, Emily said, even though Michael's family contributed exactly nothing. My phone sat on the table, still blocked from their numbers. No calls, no texts. They had no idea yet. They wouldn't know until April 10th, when they showed up at SeaTac Airport with their packed bags and expensive expectations. That was 19 days from now. The thought made my chest expand slightly, like taking a deep breath after holding it underwater for too long. 19 days of them planning, discussing which Broadway shows to see, which restaurants to try. Michael was probably bragging to coworkers about his Manhattan vacation. Emily was shopping for outfits she'd wear in Times Square. All of it was built on reservations that no longer existed. I closed the album, put it back in the drawer, and walked to the kitchen where my notebook sat on the counter. The one I usually use for grocery lists and reminder notes. I flipped to a clean page and wrote today's date at the top. Below it, I made a list, not of things I needed to do, but of things I had been doing. Automatic payments I had set up years ago and never once questioned. Emily's car insurance, which renews every 6 months using my credit card. The utilities at their Seattle house. Gas, electric, water, even their internet bill. Michael had once complained about the cost, and I had volunteered to help out temporarily. That was 4 years ago. My pen moved across the paper, tallying the numbers. Roughly $800 monthly, almost $10,000 a year. Money flowing out of my account and into their comfort, all while they decided I wasn't worth a seat on a plane I had purchased. I stared at the list and added another line. Cell phone. Emily was still on my family plan. She had been since high school. She'd never asked to switch to her own account. I'd never thought to suggest it. The notebook paper felt crisp under my fingers. I carefully tore the list out, folded it twice, and put it in my pocket. I did this not for any particular reason, but just to keep it close. to remind myself that this wasn't one single insult, but 10 years of accumulated disrespect, itemized, categorized, and finally visible. Outside, the clouds gathered over the river, promising rain. I watched them build, dark and heavy with purpose. The temperature had dropped. Spring was pretending to be winter again, the way it often did in Spokane. Unpredictable and harsh when you expected gentleness. My reflection in the window glass showed a man I barely recognized. Same gray hair, same build, but something in the eyes had changed. They looked sharper, more awake, like I'd been sleepwalking through my own life, and someone had finally shaken me conscious. The tea had gone completely cold. I poured it down the sink and rinsed the cup. Routine movements, familiar and grounding. The house settled around me. The creaks and sighs of old wood, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic on the highway. 19 days until Emily and Michael arrived at an empty reservation desk. Until they tried to check into a hotel that didn't expect them. Until their phones lit up with my number. Trying to reach someone who wouldn't answer because I had already said everything that needed saying through my actions. I thought about Martha, and what she would say if she could see this. She had always been better at standing up to Emily's demands. At drawing the boundaries I was always too soft to enforce. You're teaching her to take you for granted. Martha had warned me years ago when Emily called demanding money for something frivolous. I hadn't listened. I kept giving, kept believing that it would eventually earn me the love that should have been freely given. The folded list crinkled in my pocket when I sat back down. I pulled it out, smoothing it flat on my knee. $800 monthly, $10,000 yearly. Numbers that added up to a truth I should have faced much sooner. April 10th wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. April 10th arrived, dressed in evening shadows. I had spent 3 weeks in careful routine. Morning coffee, afternoon walks, evening reading. Normal life, except for the anticipation humming beneath every action, like waiting for the inevitable thunder after seeing lightning flash. My phone sat charging on the kitchen counter. I had unblocked their numbers that morning, not out of weakness, but out of curiosity. I wanted to hear it when their world collapsed. The first call came at 6:47 p.m. I was heating soup on the stove when my phone erupted. Emily's name flashed across the screen. Then again and again, call after frantic call, each one ringing 4 times before hitting voicemail. I stirred the soup, let it ring, counting the calls like a strange form of meditation. 1, 3, 7, 12. At call number 17, I picked up. "Where are you?" Emily's voice came through so loud and high-pitched that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. No greeting, no preamble, just raw panic dressed up as rage. "Home," I said, my voice as calm as a Sunday morning in Spokane. "Where I've been all day." "The reservation, Dad." "There's no reservation." Her breathing was ragged, like she'd been running. "The hotel says they have nothing under Anderson. The airline says our tickets were canceled. We're standing here like idiots with our luggage and nowhere to go." "I know." 2 simple words, as easy as breathing. A stunned silence cracked through the phone line. "Then you knew. You knew and you didn't. How could you do this?" "You told me not to come," I said. My soup started bubbling, and I calmly turned down the heat. "Your exact words were, 'You're not flying with us. My husband doesn't want to see you.'" So, I respected Michael's wishes and canceled everything. But we were still going. We needed. This was our vacation that I paid for. The words came out harder than I intended, driven by the years of resentment I'd buried. "Good. Every dollar. Every reservation was mine, and you kicked me off it like I was baggage you didn't want to carry. So, I took my money and went home." Michael's voice boomed from the background, muffled but clearly audible. "Let me talk to him." I heard the phone change hands. Then Michael's voice, loud and aggressive. Listen, old man. I don't know what game you're playing, but you're going to fix this right now. Transfer us money for a hotel. We'll figure out flights home tomorrow. But we need... No, no, I repeated. I let the words sit there, simple and final. You made it clear I wasn't wanted. I'm respecting that fully. You can't just strand us here. Emily again, her voice climbing toward hysteria. We have no way to... Dad, please. We don't have money for a hotel. Our credit cards are maxed. We thought everything was covered. We need... You should have checked your confirmations. I cut in. You should have called before you drove to the airport. You should have treated me with basic respect instead of like an ATM with an inconvenient personality attached. This is insane. Michael's voice was right up against the phone now. We're your family. You don't abandon family. That word, family. Like he had any right to use it after spending 8 years pretending I didn't exist at holiday dinners. After convincing my own daughter I wasn't worth a seat on a plane I'd purchased. Funny, I said. My soup had started burning. I could smell the scorched metal. But I didn't care. That's the same argument I've been using to justify supporting you both for years. Family. Except, family goes both ways. You forgot that part. Emily started crying. Real tears or performed ones. It was hard to tell over the phone. Dad, please. We have nowhere to go. The next flight home isn't until tomorrow afternoon. And we can't afford it. Then figure it out, I said, turning off the stove. The soup was ruined anyway. You're adults. Michael has a job. Emily, you're capable. I'm sure you'll manage just fine without my money for once. You're really going to do this? Leave us here. Her voice broke on the last word. It almost made me waver. Almost. But then I remembered the voice message. You're not flying with us. My husband doesn't want to see you. Sorry, but it's better this way. Delivered like a weather report. Like I was nothing. I'm not leaving you anywhere, I said quietly. I'm just not saving you from the consequences you created. There's a difference. I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. I let it. I watched the screen light up over and over. Emily, Michael, Emily, Emily, Michael. On and on, like a heartbeat made of pure desperation. By the time it finally stopped, my missed calls showed 69 attempts. 69 times they tried to reach the man they discarded 3 weeks ago. 69 chances to feel what I'd felt when that voice message played in my living room. Unwanted, disposable, less important than their comfort. A text arrived around midnight. Flying back tomorrow. Don't ever contact us again. From Emily's number, short, bitter, and exactly what I'd expected. They'd found a way home somehow. Credit card, borrowed money. Maybe Michael's company covered it as a business expense by lying about the trip purpose. It didn't matter. The important part was simpler. They'd learned what happens when you treat people like resources instead of humans. When you take and never once think about the cost. I deleted the text. I looked at my phone. Battery at 15%. Screen dimmed from overuse. The calls had stopped. The emergency was over. Handled without me for the first time in a decade. My ruined soup sat on the stove. The burnt smell still hung heavy in the kitchen. I scraped it into the trash and washed the pot. Mechanical movements that gave my hands something to do while my mind processed what I'd just done. No guilt. That surprised me the most. I kept waiting for it. For the familiar twist of regret that usually followed any time I disappointed Emily. It never came. Just a strange floating sensation, like gravity had released its hold slightly. Tomorrow they'd fly home angry, embarrassed, probably already crafting a version of events where I was the villain. I'd let them. I'd simply stopped writing their script, stopped playing the role they'd assigned me. silent, generous, endlessly available to fund their lives while remaining invisible in them. The kitchen clock read 1:15 a.m. Late. I should sleep. Instead, I stood at the window, watching clouds drift across a half-moon, thinking about what came next because this wasn't finished. Not even close. Morning arrived soft and gray. I'd slept better than expected. 8 hours straight, no dreams. I woke to silence and possibilities stretching out like an open road. My first action was checking my phone. No new messages. Emily and Michael were probably still at SeaTac, waiting for their afternoon flight, sitting in uncomfortable airport chairs, learning what uncomfortable felt like when you couldn't just call Dad to fix. I made coffee. Real coffee from the good beans I usually save for company that never came. Today felt worth celebrating in small ways. The brew smelled like dark chocolate and promise. Sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, I pulled up my bank account. The refunds had been fully processed. $5,000 minus fees. It was sitting in my checking account where it belonged. Money that could buy groceries for months. It could cover my own vacation somewhere. It could just exist as a buffer against emergencies instead of being automatically allocated to Emily's comfort. I opened my notebook to the list I'd written days ago. $800 monthly in automatic payments. $10,000 yearly. A decade of this, maybe more. The numbers had stopped meaning anything after a while. They just became routine. Expected. Not anymore. First, car insurance. I logged into the account and found Emily's policy under my family plan. The cancel button sat there innocently waiting. I hovered the cursor over it. This would mean her car would become uninsured, technically illegal to drive. Her problem now, not mine. I clicked. Confirmed. Policy canceled. Effective the end of the current coverage period. 2 weeks from now, her insurance would lapse. They'd get a notification letter and have time to set up their own policy if they actually handled their responsibilities. Next, utilities. The Seattle house account pulled from my checking automatically every month. I had set it up when they bought the place, telling myself it was temporary. For years later, I was still paying. I navigated to the payment settings, deleted my card information, and changed the contact to Emily's email instead of mine. The confirmation felt like removing a painful splinter I'd been walking on for years. A small pain when it came out, followed by enormous relief. Then, cell phone service. Emily's line. I couldn't just cancel it, contracts, penalties, complications, but I could transfer ownership, make her the account holder, and let her pay her own bill going forward. The customer service representative sounded bored when I called. They processed the change in 10 minutes. Ms. Johnson will receive notification of the account transfer, and the next bill will go to her directly. Perfect, I said. Finally. Internet service at their house, still under my name, my card. I called the provider and went through the same process. Transfer ownership, remove payment information. Each call took less than 15 minutes. Each one felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. By noon, I had dismantled 10 years of financial support in under 3 hours. No dramatic confrontation, no explanation owed, just the quiet removal of resources they'd taken completely for granted. My coffee had gone cold again. I reheated it in the microwave, standing at the kitchen window, watching the river. The water moved steady and purposeful, the way it always had, unconcerned with human drama, just following its nature downhill towards something larger. I thought about calling Emily, explaining what I'd done, giving her a chance to yell at me properly instead of through voicemails and missed connections. But what would be the point? She demonstrated exactly how much my presence meant to her. This was just me matching her energy, reciprocating her level of care. Fair was fair. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Emily on Michael's phone. Mine died. We're boarding now. You've destroyed our family over nothing. Hope you're satisfied living alone with your selfishness. I read it twice. I looked for anything resembling self-awareness. Found none. Just accusation. Just victim performance. No acknowledgement that she had sent the voice message that started this whole mess. No acknowledgement that she had kicked me off a vacation I had purchased, or that she had spent a decade treating me like a wallet with legs. I didn't respond. I let her have the last word if it made her feel better. Words were cheap. My actions told the real truth. Instead, I opened my banking app again. I calculated what I had been spending monthly on their lives, the $800, and then added my own bills. The mortgage was paid off years ago, plus utilities, food, and gas, totaling perhaps $1,200. My pension covered $3,000 monthly, with plenty of room to spare. For years, most of my excess income had flowed directly to Emily. I had lived small and carefully. I told myself I was being generous. I never questioned whether generosity, without appreciation, was simply enabling. Now, looking at my budget with their expenses removed, I saw possibilities. Small trips I could finally take. Hobbies I had abandoned because Emily needs. Books I could buy without guilt. Restaurants I could try without having to calculate whether I could afford it after making sure they were covered. Freedom tasted like reheated coffee and quiet mornings, like canceled policies and transferred accounts. It tasted like finally putting myself on the list of people I support. The river outside kept moving. I watched it and felt myself moving too, away from the man who had believed love meant endless giving, towards someone who understood that respect had to flow both ways or not at all. This was just the beginning. I had realized it yesterday, and today confirmed it. The foundation was set. Everything I had automatically provided was now removed. Everything they had assumed would always be there was suddenly absent. I would let them rebuild without me. I would let them figure out insurance and bills, and how to fund their lives with their own resources. They'd had years of practice at taking. Time would tell if they'd learned anything about earning. My phone stayed quiet. They were on the plane now, probably sitting in middle seats, uncomfortable and angry, planning what they would tell friends and family about their terrible father, who had abandoned them. I let them. People who actually knew me would see right through it. People who weren't worth explaining to. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and looked around my kitchen. Same counters, same stove, same view. Everything was familiar, but I stood in it differently now. Straighter, lighter, like I had been carrying their weight for so long that I'd forgotten what my own shoulders felt like. The notebook sat open on the table. I picked up my pen, turned to a fresh page, and wrote at the top. Things I want to do. Then I started listing, mostly small things. Visit the coast. Join the community center. Take that woodworking class I'd seen advertised. Call old friends I'd lost touch with because Emily always needed something. Build a life that was mine. Just mine. No one else's to commandeer, dismiss, or take for granted. The pen moved across the paper. Each item felt like reclaiming territory I had surrendered without realizing I'd lost it. Each word was a small declaration. I matter too. Outside, the river kept flowing. Inside, for the first time in 10 years, I felt like I was moving with it instead of standing still while it rushed past. The day after felt even lighter, somehow more practical. I woke with purpose instead of dread. I made breakfast without the background hum of obligation. The list from yesterday sat on my counter. The things I wanted to do. But first, I needed to close a few more loops. My desk faces the window, the river view steady as always. I pulled up my email, scrolled through the confirmation messages from yesterday's cancellations. Everything had processed cleanly. Emily's car insurance canceled. Utilities transferred. Phone, her responsibility now. Internet, same. But I had missed something. The gym membership I had added her to years ago, back when she claimed she needed it for her health. $29 monthly, automatically charged. Small enough to forget, significant enough to matter. I called the fitness center and waited through hold music. Something instrumental and forgettable. Thank you for calling Peak Performance. This is Jordan speaking. Hi, I need to remove someone from my family membership. Emily Johnson. She's been on my account for about 6 years. My voice was steady, businesslike. Keys clicked in the background. I see her here. May I ask why you're removing her? She's transitioning to her own account. Not a lie. I was just letting them imagine a version where Emily had plans and agency instead of entitlement and shock coming her way. Understood. Effective immediately or end of billing cycle? Immediately. More clicking. Done. She'll receive a notification within 24 hours. Anything else I can help with today? That's all. Thank you. One more thread cut. I made a note in my tracking spreadsheet. Yes, I had started a spreadsheet yesterday. Columns for service, cancellation date, confirmation number. Martha would have laughed and called me obsessive. She'd also be proud of the thoroughness. Next item, the Amazon Prime account. Emily uses it constantly. Packages arrive at her Seattle address weekly. I had added her as a household member years ago. I never questioned the shared access until now. The website made it easy. 3 clicks and a confirmation checkbox. Emily Johnson has been removed from your Amazon household. She would lose access to my Prime benefits, free shipping, streaming, all of it. She would need her own subscription or learn to pay shipping costs like everyone else. My coffee cooled while I worked. Checking accounts. Subscriptions. Anywhere my card information connected to their convenience. A storage unit I had rented when they needed overflow space. Cancelled. The contents are their problem now. A roadside assistance plan that covered her car. Terminated. Each one was small individually. Together, they formed a scaffolding I had built around their lives without realizing how much structure I had provided. By lunchtime, I had identified 12 separate services. By dinner, I had canceled 11. The 12th was trickier. The shared cloud storage where I had backed up family photos. Emily had access, and so did I. Deleting it felt too permanent, too petty. Instead, I downloaded everything to an external drive, then removed her access. I would let her keep whatever she had already saved. The rest was mine. The sun angled lower, painting my office walls gold. I leaned back in my chair, my joints creaking in sympathy. 65 years old, spending my afternoon navigating customer service menus and clicking cancel subscription buttons. Not how I had imagined this decade of my life. But then, I hadn't imagined a lot of things. I hadn't imagined my daughter would measure my worth in wire transfers. I hadn't imagined I'd need to teach her consequences like she was still a teenager instead of a grown woman with a husband and a house. My phone sat silent on the desk. They didn't know yet. They wouldn't know until bills started arriving in their name. Cancellation notices piling up like evidence of my absence. 4 days, maybe 5, before the first wave hit. Utility companies were usually fastest. Then insurance notices. Then the smaller subscriptions. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. I should feel guilty. That's what good fathers felt, wasn't it? Remorse over hard lessons. Worry about their children's struggles. I waited for those emotions. I checked my chest for their familiar weight. Nothing. Just a quiet satisfaction, like finishing a project I'd procrastinated on too long. Completing tasks that needed doing, even if they weren't pleasant. Outside, the river caught sunset colors, orange and pink reflecting on the gray water. I'd lived by this river my entire adult life. I'd watched it flood and freeze and thaw and flow. It never stops moving. It never questions its direction, just follows the path gravity provides, wearing down obstacles through patient persistence. Maybe that's what this was. Not revenge, not cruelty, just gravity. Natural consequences flowing downhill toward people who'd convinced themselves they could stand above cause and effect indefinitely. My spreadsheet showed completion times: 11:47 a.m., 1:23 p.m., 3:06 p.m., 4:41 p.m. Each timestamp was a moment where I chose myself over automatic generosity, where I asked, "Why am I doing this?" and found no good answer except habit. Emily will call eventually. Not tomorrow, not the next day, but soon, when the disconnections are announced and reality starts costing money she doesn't have. She'll call angry, demanding explanations, acting wounded. Michael will probably get on the line too, his voice tight with that particular strain of aggressive defensiveness men use when they're scared but can't admit it. I'll answer. I'll let them yell. Then I'll explain calmly, quietly, that I was simply no longer subsidizing people who'd made it clear I was unwanted. They'll call me selfish, vindictive, cruel. All the words people use when someone stops giving them things they've grown entitled to. And I'll accept those labels, wear them like armor. Better to be called selfish while respecting myself than generous while being treated like a disposable resource. The spreadsheet glowed on my screen. 12 rows of canceled services. 12 small acts of self-preservation. Not enough to hurt them permanently, just enough to inconvenience them thoroughly. To make visible all the invisible support I provided while being told I wasn't wanted on a vacation I'd purchased. Fair was fair. I saved the spreadsheet, backed it up to my new private cloud storage, documentation, proof if anyone asked, that I'd actually been supporting them more than they'd realized or acknowledged. Evidence that my withdrawal wasn't randomly cruel, but a proportional response. Tomorrow I'd go to the community center, maybe sign up for that woodworking class, start building something new instead of maintaining something broken. But tonight, I'd sit here with my river view and my completed spreadsheet, and the profound relief of a burden set down. The phone stayed silent. The river kept flowing, and I felt, for the first time in 10 years, like my own person instead of someone's permanent safety net. 4 days passed in deliberate silence. I took walks along the river, bought books I'd been meaning to read, and slept better than I had in months. No calls, no texts, just the peaceful absence of other people's emergencies becoming mine. Until Tuesday evening, 6:43 p.m. My phone erupted. Emily's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice, 3 times, poured myself a glass of water, sat down at my kitchen table, and then answered. "What have you done?" Her voice came through jagged, somewhere between rage and panic. No hello, no preamble, straight to accusation. "I assume you got some notices," I said, keeping my tone even, conversational, like discussing the weather instead of consequences. "Notices? Dad, they're threatening to shut off our power. The insurance company says my car isn't covered anymore. The internet's been disconnected. My phone bill is suddenly in my name with a balance due. And all those things are accurate," I said, taking a sip of water. "I let those bills do some work for me. You can't just... This is insane. We can't afford all these bills at once. You know that. We were already struggling from the New York disaster you caused." "The New York disaster you caused?" I corrected gently. "I caused it by telling me I wasn't wanted on a trip I'd paid for. I just acted accordingly." "That's not... Dad, this is cruel. You're punishing us for one mistake. For something Michael said when he was stressed about work. You're being completely... Michael said?" I set my water glass down carefully. "Emily, the voice message came from your phone. Your voice. Your words. Michael doesn't want to see you. Those precise words. You delivered that message. You made that choice. A ragged, heavy breathing filled the line. She was crying, or trying desperately not to. I waited. Martha always said I was too quick to fill silences, too eager to smooth over discomfort. Time to break that habit. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Emily's voice came out smaller. We weren't trying to hurt you. We just thought the hotel had limited space, and Michael gets anxious around family, and it would be easier. Easier without me. I understand, I said, the words landing flat and factual. That's why I made things easier for myself too. No more automatic payments. No more subsidizing your lives while being treated as optional. You don't understand what it's like. The panic surged back, drowning out whatever momentary vulnerability had appeared. We have a mortgage, car payments. Michael's job barely covers rent. And without your help, we can't live the lifestyle you've grown. Emily, you're 35 years old. Michael is 37, I said, tracing patterns on the table. You're adults with a house and a career. Or at least Michael has a career. Maybe it's time you got one too. I'm a homemaker. That is a career. And we needed your support. You know that. When you offered it, you can't just pull it away because your feelings got hurt over one trip. One trip, I repeated slowly. Let's talk about one trip. I paid $5,000 for tickets and hotels. You sent me a 15-second voice message saying I wasn't welcome, then showed up at the airport expecting everything to still be there. Expecting me to fund your vacation while staying home like a good little checkbook. When that didn't work, you demanded I wire you money to fix the problem you created. And now you're calling me cruel. Michael's voice came through the background, muffled but aggressive. Is that him? Let me. No, Emily snapped, then quickly returned to me. Dad, please. I'm asking you. Please just. We need help. The power bill is $300. Insurance is another $250. And whose fault is that? I asked. Silence. You spent 10 years taking my support for granted. I continued. My voice stayed calm. That surprised me. I had expected anger, but instead, I found clarity. You never once asked if I could afford it. You never considered that money had to come from somewhere. You just assumed I'd keep paying indefinitely while you treated me like an inconvenience you tolerated for the benefits. That's not true. We love you. We've always. Love requires more than words, Emily. It requires respect, consideration, and basic acknowledgement that I'm a person, not a resource. You failed on all counts. So that's it? You're just done with us? Your own daughter? Tears were audible now. Real or performed. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't care. You'd rather let us lose everything than forgive one mistake. I'm not making you lose anything, I clarified. I'm just not preventing you from experiencing the costs of your own decisions. There's a difference. You have two incomes potential, Michael's job, and whatever work you choose to pursue. You have a house you can sell or refinance if needed. You have options, just not me as an option anymore. You're a terrible father. You know that. Terrible. Her voice climbed toward hysteria. What would Mom say if she could see this? Abandoning us when we need you most. Martha's name, used as a weapon. That almost worked. It almost made me flinch. But then I remembered Martha had been the one warning me about this exact dynamic, telling me I was teaching Emily to take me for granted. Martha would have cut the support years ago. Your mother would tell you to grow up and take responsibility for your life. The words came out harder than intended. Good. She'd tell you that love isn't measured in wire transfers, and she'd be disappointed in how you've treated me. Emily made a sound, half sob, half rage. Fine, fine. Don't help us. See what happens. When we lose the house, When we're struggling, remember that you chose this. You chose to abandon your family over your hurt ego. I chose self-respect over being used, I countered. I stood up and carried my glass to the sink. You can choose to respect that or not. Either way, I'm done with this conversation. Wait, Dad, please. I hung up. The phone immediately started ringing again. I declined the call. And the next one. And the next. Finally, I turned it to silent. I watched it light up repeatedly with ignored attempts. By 8 p.m., 23 missed calls showed on my screen. A record, even beating the airport night. I deleted the notifications and blocked their numbers again. I should have left them blocked after the first time. A text came through from an unknown number around 9 p.m. This is Emily from a friend's phone. You're making a huge mistake. We'll figure this out without you. Don't expect to hear from us again. I read it twice. I looked for remorse, accountability, any hint of self-awareness. I found only threats dressed as consequences, as if not hearing from them was punishment rather than relief. I didn't respond. I just added the number to my block list and put my phone on the counter. Outside, darkness had settled over the river. No moon tonight, just stars reflecting on the black water. Inside, I felt something settle too. Not satisfaction exactly, more like resolution. The argument I'd been avoiding for 10 years had finally been fought, and the boundaries I should have set a decade ago were finally established. Late, yes, but done. Emily would tell people her version. The cruel father who abandoned his struggling daughter over nothing. Michael would corroborate, embellish, and paint me as the villain. Friends and distant relatives will hear a story carefully edited to erase 10 years of one-sided generosity, and a voice message that started everything. Let them. The truth has a way of emerging eventually, and people who actually mattered would ask questions, see patterns, and recognize the imbalance. The rest didn't matter. They had never mattered. Just voices in the background judging situations they didn't understand. My phone glowed on the counter, silent now. No more calls were coming through. They had said their piece, made their demands, discovered that demands without leverage were just wishes shouted into a void. I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed. Tomorrow I'd wake up and continue building whatever came next. Tonight, I'd sleep knowing I'd stood my ground. Finally, after 10 years of bending, better late than never, Saturday morning arrived, gray and cool. I'd spent the week in careful routine. Morning coffee, afternoon reading, evening walks. The phone stayed blessedly quiet. No calls, no texts, just silence where chaos used to live. After breakfast, I opened my laptop. Email first, bills, newsletters, nothing urgent. Then, out of habit, I clicked over to Facebook. I rarely posted, mostly scrolled to see what old friends were doing. Retirement snapshots, photos of grandchildren, the usual pleasant superficiality of social connection. Emily's post sat right at the top of my feed. Posted 2 hours ago. The preview text made my coffee turn bitter in my mouth. When your own father betrays you, I clicked immediately. I wished I hadn't. The full post sprawled across my screen like an open wound. I never thought I'd have to write this, but I need to share what's happening. My father, who I've always loved and respected, has decided to completely cut us off financially, canceling our car insurance, utilities, even our phone service. All because we had to make a difficult decision about a family trip. He paid for a vacation to New York, and when my husband, who struggles with anxiety, said he needed the trip to be just us two for his mental health, my dad canceled everything and left us stranded at the airport with no way home. Now he's scientifically destroying our lives by removing all support, leaving us scrambling to keep our power on and food on the table. I'm heartbroken. I thought family meant unconditional love. Apparently, I was wrong. If anyone knows of job opportunities in Seattle or can offer advice, please reach out. We're trying to rebuild from this betrayal. I read it 3 times. Each word was carefully chosen. Each detail was exactly angled. The anxiety mention was new information, a convenient justification. The unconditional love framing, as if love meant funding without boundaries. The destroying our lives hyperbole, painting me as a villain instead of someone who had simply stopped being a perpetual ATM. The comments section stretched long below the post. 53 replies, most of them sympathetic. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Family should support each other always. Your dad sounds toxic. You're better off without that negative. This is financial abuse. You should look into legal options. Can't believe a parent would do this." Sending prayers and positive vibes. A few voices of skepticism appeared, buried deep in the thread. There's probably more to this story. Why were you depending on your dad for bills at 35? Seems like maybe setting boundaries isn't betrayal. But Emily had responded to those with more elaboration, more justification. Michael had commented, too. "We've tried everything to reach out and resolve this, but James refuses to even talk to us like adults. It's devastating." I sat back, staring at the screen. This was the counterattack I had expected, but hadn't quite prepared for. Emily was seizing the public narrative, framing herself as the victim, and me as the villain, banking on the fact that most people would see father cuts off daughter, and immediately stop thinking critically. My first instinct was to respond, to write my own comment explaining the voice message, the years of unacknowledged support, the entitled demands, and defend myself with facts and receipts. But I stopped, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. What would that accomplish? A public argument with my daughter, where everyone picked sides, and the truth got buried under emotional appeals? Giving her more ammunition for the victim narrative? No, better to let this play out. People who knew me would ask questions privately. People who weren't worth convincing. I screenshotted the post anyway. I saved it to a folder with all the other documentation. Bank statements showing years of transfers, the voice message transcribed, and cancellation confirmations. Not to use right now, but just to have, in case. Then, I logged out of Facebook and closed the laptop. The post would be there whether I looked at it or not, gathering reactions and reshares from people who had never met me and never would. My phone buzzed. A text from Paul, an old work friend. "Hey Jim, saw Emily's post. Are you okay? Call me if you want to talk." Simple, direct, not assuming anything. That's what actual friends did. They asked instead of judging. I typed back, "I'm fine. Long story, but I'm doing what's right for me. Coffee sometime?" "Absolutely." "Thursday work," he replied. "Perfect. One conversation scheduled. One person willing to hear my side without performing public sympathy." That was more valuable than 1,000 Facebook comments. The morning stretched ahead. I could spend it refreshing that post, watching the comment count climb, torturing myself with strangers' opinions about a situation they didn't understand. Or I could go to the hardware store, price materials for the bookshelf I'd been planning, and start building something tangible instead of dwelling on things I couldn't control. Hardware store it is. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and wallet. I checked the list I'd made earlier. Oak boards would glue sandpaper stain. A project Martha and I had talked about years ago, but never got around to. Time to finally do it. Driving toward town, I thought about Emily's post. The phrase "destroy our lives" stuck in my mind like a splinter. As if removing my money destroys them. As if they had no agency, no capability, no option except dependence on a father they'd rejected when convenient. That implied helplessness was the most surprising part. I'd raised Emily to be stronger than this. Martha and I had taught her problem-solving, resilience, and independence. Somewhere along the way, those lessons got buried under the easier path. Just ask Dad. He'll fix it. I'd enabled that. I let it happen through years of automatic yes. Every time I should have said, "Figure it out yourself," I'd said, "Here's money instead." I taught her learned helplessness while trying to show love. Fixing that now, at 35, would hurt. It was hurting, based on that Facebook post, but it was necessary hurt. Growing pain hurt. The kind that led somewhere better if you push through instead of avoiding it. The hardware store parking lot was nearly empty. Saturday morning, most people were sleeping in or running other errands. I parked near the entrance, sat for a moment in my truck. Rain had started, finally. Light drops on the windshield blurred the world into soft shapes. Inside, I would buy materials and build something. Outside, Emily's post would keep circulating, gathering reactions, creating a version of events that had nothing to do with reality. Both things would happen simultaneously. Only one mattered for my actual life. I got out of the truck. Rain touched my face, cold and clean. The hardware store door slid open with a mechanical hiss. Inside smelled like sawdust and possibility. Time to build something new. That evening, after the hardware store and the bookshelf materials sat stacked neatly in my garage, I made dinner. Simple pasta, nothing fancy. I ate it at my kitchen table while my laptop glowed across from me. Facebook still open to Emily's post. The comments had multiplied. 78 now, most painting me as some kind of monster. I'd spent 10 years being careful with Emily, measuring my words, softening truths, and accepting blame I didn't earn to keep the peace. That version of fatherhood had gotten me a voice message saying I wasn't wanted and a public post calling me a traitor. Time to stop being careful. My phone sat next to my plate. I picked it up, scrolled to my saved messages. The voice message from March 20th, preserved like evidence. 15 seconds that started everything. I played it once more. Emily's voice, flat and final. "Dad, you're not flying with us to New York. My husband doesn't want to see you. I know you pay for everything, but it's better this way. Sorry." Better for whom? I'd wondered then. Now I knew. Better for them. Always for them. The second recording was newer. The phone call from April 16th. I'd recorded it using an app one downloaded after the airport confrontation. Some instinct telling me to document what came next. Good instinct. The file captured everything. Emily's accusations, her claims about me being cruel, the part where she said, "We needed your support. Can't you just help us?" This once, like the past decade, hadn't happened. Both files were backed up to my computer. Both were ready to share. Both were true in ways that Emily's carefully worded post was not. I opened Facebook, logged in properly this time. Not just scrolling. I created a new post, carefully typing. I've seen the post my daughter made about me. Since she chose to make this public, I'll respond publicly with facts. Below are 2 audio recordings. The first is the voice message she sent me after I paid $5,200 for a family vacation to New York. The second is our phone conversation when she discovered I'd canceled the trip after being told I wasn't wanted. Listen for yourselves, then decide who betrayed whom. I uploaded both files. The voice message took 12 seconds. The phone conversation was 3 minutes and 48 seconds. Progress bars crept across my screen while I waited. The mouse cursor hovered over the post button. This was the line. Once crossed, there would be no taking it back. Emily would see it. So would her friends, Michael's coworkers, distant relatives, everyone in their social circle. They'd hear her cold dismissal, her entitled demands, her complete lack of accountability. She'd hate me for this, probably forever. The relationship we had, strained and conditional as it was, would likely end here. But what relationship was it? One where I paid and stayed silent while she lied about me online? Where I accepted being called cruel to reluctantly fund people who had rejected me? That wasn't a relationship. That was exploitation with a family label attached. I clicked the post button. The screen refreshed. My response appeared at the top of my feed. Audio files embedded and playable. Posted 1 minute ago. 0 reactions yet. 0 comments. I stood up, walked to the window. The river outside had gone dark. Just a black ribbon cutting through darker land. Somewhere in Seattle, Emily was probably scrolling her phone, reading supportive comments, feeling vindicated in her victim narrative. That wouldn't last long. My phone buzzed. A notification. Someone had listened to the first audio. Then another notification, and another. The numbers started climbing. Reactions, shares, and comments arrived faster than I could track them. I picked up my plate, rinsed it, and made tea I didn't want. I just needed something to do with my hands while my phone lit up like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. Each buzz meant another person was hearing the truth instead of Emily's edited version. 20 minutes after posting, my phone rang. It was Paul, the friend I'd scheduled coffee with. I answered, "Jim." His voice came through, warm and relieved. "I just listened to your post. Everyone needs to hear this. I'm sorry you went through that. Thanks for listening before judging." My tea had steeped too long and turned bitter. I added sugar. Half the people commenting on Emily's post are changing their tune now, deleting their sympathetic comments. Someone tagged her in yours. She's probably seen it by now. Probably. The thought should have made me nervous. Instead, I felt calm, like setting down a weight I'd been holding at arm's length for too long, like tired muscles finally allowed to rest. "Let me know if you need anything," Paul said. "And I mean it about coffee Thursday. I'll be there." After he hung up, I opened Facebook again. My post had exploded. 200 reactions, 83 comments. Numbers that meant nothing except that people were finally listening. After years of Emily controlling the narrative, presenting herself as a struggling daughter with an unsupportive father, the actual story was getting told. I scrolled through the comments. "This changes everything. Your daughter sounds dependently entitled. You paid for a vacation and she uninvited you. Then got mad you canceled? The nerve. 10 years of financial support. And this is how she treats you? I'm so sorry. Anyone calling him cruel needs to listen to these recordings. She's manipulative." Not everyone agreed. Some people, mostly Emily's close friends, doubled down on defending her. There's always two sides. Maybe he's manipulative off recording. A father should support his child, no matter what. But those voices were drowned by the majority. By people who'd heard Emily's coldness, her lack of gratitude, her weaponized helplessness, who recognized patterns they'd seen in their own lives. Takers who called boundary setting abuse and self-respect cruelty. My notifications kept buzzing. Someone had shared my post to a group about family boundaries. Then another share, and another, the audio files spreading beyond my small social circle, finding audiences who understood exactly what they were hearing. I turned my phone to silent, set its screen down on the table. This part was completed, truth distributed, evidence provided, lies exposed. What happened next was out of my control. Outside, the clouds had cleared. Stars appeared, scattered across the black sky like someone had spilled salt. I'd spent 10 years trying to be the father Emily wanted. Generous to a fault, never demanding reciprocity, accepting scraps of affection as payment for thousands of dollars. That version of me had enabled her worst qualities while suffocating my own needs. The bookshelf materials waited in my garage. Tomorrow I'd start building. Tonight I'd sleep knowing I'd finally stopped protecting someone who'd never protected me. stopped hiding her cruelty to preserve a relationship that only existed when she needed money. My phone glowed on the table despite being face down, still buzzing periodically with notifications I wasn't reading. Somewhere in that digital noise, Emily was probably panicking, realizing her carefully constructed victim story had been demolished by her own recorded words, facing consequences for the first time in years. I felt no satisfaction in that, no joy, just a quiet sense of completion, like finishing a difficult project or closing a book you've been reading too long. Relief that it was done. Hope that what comes next will be better. The tea had gone cold again. I poured it out, turned off the lights, and headed upstairs. Behind me, my phone kept lighting up the dark kitchen, notifications piling up like evidence that truth, when finally told, had power. Emily's lies never would. Tomorrow will bring more reactions, more comments. Probably angry messages from Emily once she processed what had happened. But tonight belongs to sleep and the strange peace that came from finally defending myself. The river kept flowing. The stars stayed scattered. And I felt lighter than I had in a decade. For days disappeared into quiet routine. I built the bookshelf, sanding, staining, fitting the pieces together with the patience retirement had taught me. I went to coffee with Paul, who told me about the online buzz my post had created. "You're practically famous in the parenting boundaries community," he'd said, grinning. I hadn't known such a community existed. Thursday morning, I allowed myself to check social media again. My post sat there with numbers that looked made up. 847 reactions, 312 comments, 156 shares. The audio files had been downloaded hundreds of times, spreading across platforms I didn't even use. I scrolled through the comments section. New voices appeared every few hours. I played this for my husband who keeps giving money to his entitled sister. Eye-opening. My daughter pulled the same thing. Uninvited me to an event I'd sponsored. Thank you for speaking up. Everyone needs to hear this. Financial abuse goes both ways. The entitlement in her voice when she says, "We needed your support." Unbelievable. Buried deep in the flood of support, I found Emily's response. Posted 2 days ago, easy to miss among hundreds of other comments. "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this publicly. You've taken a private family matter and turned it into entertainment. This is exactly why we needed space from you. You don't respect boundaries." She quickly replied, "I'm deleting my original post because clearly you've poisoned everyone against me. Congratulations on your vindication. Hope it keeps you warm at night." No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd said in those recordings. Just more accusations dressed as injury. More victim performance designed to guilt me back into silence. But her comment had 9 reactions compared to hundreds on mine. Nobody was buying it anymore. The responses to her comment told that story. You made it public first. He just provided context. Respect boundaries? You uninvited him from a trip he paid for. Maybe listen to how you sound in those recordings and reflect. I kept scrolling. I found a comment from someone claiming to be Emily's friend. I've known Emily for years. Always wondered about her relationship with her dad. She'd complain he was unsupportive, but show up with new expensive things he'd bought. The cognitive dissonance was wild. These recordings explain everything. Another was from someone who'd been at their wedding. I remember James at the reception. Paid for half of it. Spent the whole night alone at his table while Emily and Michael ignored him. Felt awful watching that. Makes sense now. Strangers were filling in the pieces of a story I'd been too close to see clearly. A pattern of taking while complaining, of accepting generosity while showing contempt, of treating family like an ATM that occasionally had feelings you needed to manage. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. "Hello, Mr. Anderson. A female voice said, professional. This is Sarah Chun from the Spokane Chronicle. I'm a reporter covering family dynamics and financial boundaries. Your story has gone somewhat viral in certain online communities. Would you be willing to speak with me for an article? A reporter? My story was newsworthy? The thought made me tired. I don't think so. I just wanted people to hear the truth, not looking for publicity. I understand, but your situation resonates with thousands of people dealing with similar dynamics. Adult children expecting indefinite parental support while offering minimal relationship. It's become a cultural issue, especially among boomers transitioning to retirement. Your voice could help others. They can listen to the recordings. That says everything. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, here's my number. She recited digits I didn't write down. And Mr. Anderson, for what it's worth, my mother went through something similar with my brother. Your post helped her finally set boundaries. So, thank you. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, thinking about thousands of people I'd never met, all listening to my daughter dismiss me in 15 seconds, all recognizing something familiar, all maybe learning that saying no didn't make them cruel. A text arrived from Emily's number. It still wasn't blocked somehow. I'd forgotten to block it again after the Facebook posts. You've made your point. Everyone thinks I'm a terrible person now. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? I stared at the message, thought about responding, explaining that I didn't want the truth or her humiliated, just wanted the truth told. That she'd started this by lying publicly. That everything I'd posted was her own words, nothing fabricated or manipulated. But what would be the point? Emily wasn't asking for understanding. She was asking me to feel guilty for defending myself, to apologize for not letting her control the narrative, to go back to being the silent checkbook who absorbed blame without complaint. I deleted the text and blocked the number again, properly this time. No more chances to pull me back into patterns I'd spent months breaking. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, the day had turned bright and clear, rare for April in Spokane. I grabbed my jacket. The bookshelf could wait. I needed to move, let the internet drama settle, while I reminded myself what mattered. The river, the trees, the physical world that exists regardless of comments and shares and viral posts. Downtown, people passed without recognizing me. Nobody pointed or stared. I was still just a retired engineer taking a morning walk. The online attention hadn't translated to real-world fame. Good. I'd had enough attention to last a lifetime. At the community center, I stopped, walked inside. The woodworking class I'd been considering met on Saturday mornings. I signed up, paid the fee with my own money for my own interest. Not as a favor, not as a gift, just as something I wanted to do. You'll need supplies, the coordinator said, handing me a list. But we have tools here. Looking forward to seeing you Saturday. Walking back home, I felt something settle. The Facebook post would keep circulating. Comments would keep arriving. But that wasn't my life. That was just noise around it. My actual life was this. Morning walks, coffee meetings, woodworking classes. Small choices adding up to days I controlled. My phone stayed quiet in my pocket. No more texts from Emily. No more unknown numbers. Just the weight of a device I could ignore whenever I wanted. At home, the bookshelf stood half-finished in my garage. I picked up sandpaper and got back to work. The rhythm of sanding felt meditative, back and forth. Watching rough would smooth under pressure. Simple cause and effect. Put in work, see results. No ambiguity, no manipulation, just wood and hands and time. Hours passed. The bookshelf took shape. My phone notifications collected. I didn't check them. Somewhere, Emily was probably still angry, still feeling victimized, still unable to see how her own actions had created every consequence she was experiencing. That was her journey to take or ignore. Mine was here, in sawdust and river views, and the quiet satisfaction of building something that wouldn't demand anything back. The sun angled lower. I stepped back and examined my work. Almost finished. Another day, maybe two. Then I'd fill it with books I'd been meaning to read. Stories about other people's lives, other people's choices, a reminder that my drama, however loud it had gotten online, was just one small narrative in an infinite collection. That thought should have felt diminishing. Instead, it felt freeing. I was one person in billions doing my best to live with dignity. The viral post would fade. Emily would move on, or she wouldn't. Either way, I'd build a bookshelf, signed up for a class, and walked downtown without anyone's permission. That felt like enough. May 20th arrived, warm and green. Spring had finally committed to staying. I'd spent the past month settling into patterns that felt like mine. Saturday woodworking, Tuesday walks, Friday coffee with Paul. The bookshelf stood finished in my living room, holding books I'd actually been reading instead of just owning. The Facebook post had faded from viral status to an occasional mention. I replied to her comment. I'm deleting my original post because clearly you've poisoned everyone against me. Congratulations on your vindication. Hope it keeps you warm at night. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd said in those recordings. Just more accusations dressed as injury, more victim performance designed to guilt me back into silence. But her comment had 9 reactions compared to hundreds on others. Nobody was buying it anymore. The responses to her told that story. You made it public first. He just provided context. Respect boundaries. You uninvited him from a trip he paid for. Maybe listen to how you sound in those recordings and reflect. I kept scrolling. I found a comment from someone claiming to be Emily's friend. I've known Emily for years. Always wondered about her relationship with her dad. She'd complain he was unsupportive, but show up with new expensive things he'd bought. The cognitive dissonance was wild. These recordings explain everything. Another was from someone who'd been at their wedding. I remember James at the reception. Paid for half of it. Spent the whole night alone at his table, while Emily and Michael ignored him. Felt awful watching that. Makes sense now. Strangers were filling in pieces of a story I'd been too close to see clearly. A pattern of taking while complaining, of accepting generosity while showing contempt, of treating family like an ATM that occasionally had feelings you needed to manage. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. Hello, Mr. Anderson. A professional female voice said. This is Sarah Chun from the Spokane Chronicle. I'm a reporter covering family dynamics and financial boundaries. Your story has gone somewhat viral in certain online communities. Would you be willing to speak with me for an article? A reporter? My story was newsworthy. The thought made me tired. I don't think so. I just wanted people to hear the truth, not looking for publicity. I understand. But your situation resonates with thousands of people dealing with similar dynamics. Your voice could help others. They can listen to the recordings. That says everything. Fair enough. But if you change your mind, here's my number. She recited digits I didn't write down. And Mr. Anderson, for what it's worth, my mother went through something similar with my brother. Your post helped her finally set boundaries. So, thank you. She hung up. I sat there holding my phone, thinking about thousands of people I'd never met, all listening to my daughter dismiss me in 15 seconds, all recognizing something familiar, all maybe learning that saying no didn't make them cruel. A text arrived from Emily's number. Still not blocked, somehow. I'd forgotten to block it again after the Facebook posts. You've made your point. Everyone thinks I'm a terrible person now. Are you happy? Is this what you wanted? I stared at the message, thought about responding, explaining that I didn't want the truth or her humiliated, just wanted the truth told. But what would be the point? Emily wasn't asking for understanding. She was asking me to feel guilty for defending myself. I deleted the text and blocked the number again, properly this time. No more chances to pull me back into patterns I'd spent months breaking. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, the day had turned bright and clear. I grabbed my jacket. I needed to move. Let the internet drama settle, while I reminded myself what mattered. The river, the trees, the physical world. At the community center, I stopped, walked inside. I signed up for the woodworking class. Paid the fee with my own money for my own interest. "You'll need supplies," the coordinator said. "Looking forward to seeing you Saturday." Walking back home, I felt something settled. The Facebook post would circulate, but that wasn't my life. That was just noise around it. My actual life was this. Morning walks, coffee meetings, woodworking classes, small choices adding up to days I controlled. At home, the bookshelf stood half-finished in my garage. I picked up sandpaper, got back to work. The rhythm of sanding felt meditative. Simple cause and effect. Put in work, see results. May 20th arrived, warm and green. Spring had finally committed to staying. I'd spent the past month settling into patterns that felt like mine. The bookshelf stood finished in my living room. The Facebook post had faded from viral status to an occasional mention. I was making lunch when the doorbell rang. Unexpected. Through the window beside the door, I saw her. Emily standing on my porch in jeans and a sweater that looked like Martha's. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen my daughter face to face in over a year. She looked thinner, tired. The way people look when they've been crying recently and sleeping poorly. Her car sat in my driveway, which meant she'd driven 5 hours from Seattle to show up unannounced. I opened the door. "Emily." "Dad." Her voice cracked slightly. "Can I come in, please?" Every instinct screamed caution. This could be manipulation. Another attempt to guilt me back into old patterns. But she'd driven 5 hours. That meant something, maybe. I stepped back. She entered slowly, like approaching something that might spook. We stood in my entryway, awkward, careful. Two people who shared DNA, but had forgotten how to share space. "Coffee." The offering came automatically. Hospitality habits die hard. That would be nice. I led her to the kitchen, made 2 cups while she sat at my table, the same table where I had sat when her voice message arrived. The silence between us felt heavy with all of it. I set her cup down, sat across from her, and waited. This was her visit, her move. Emily wrapped her hands around the mug, staring at it. "I listened to the recordings," she said, looking up. Her eyes were red. Not just once, maybe 100 times over the past month. "I sound awful, Dad. Entitled and cold. And I didn't realize. I truly didn't realize how I've been treating you." I said nothing. Let her continue. "Michael and I have been fighting a lot about money, about you, about how we've been living. I kept telling myself you were being unreasonable, that parents should support their kids, that the recordings were taken out of context." She laughed, a bitter, small sound. "But there's no context that makes what I said okay. No way to reframe. My husband doesn't want to see you into something that doesn't sound." My coffee warmed my hands. I still didn't speak. She needed to say this. I needed to hear it without jumping in to make it easier. "I've been working." The words came out quietly. "Got a job at a marketing firm. Entry level. Barely pays anything, but it's mine. Michael's been picking up overtime. We're managing the bills now. Barely. Definitely not comfortable. But we're doing it ourselves." She met my eyes. "I should have been doing that all along instead of just expecting you to carry us forever." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." Emily flinched, but nodded. I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for the voice message, for everything I said on the phone, for the Facebook post, for 10 years of taking your money and giving you nothing but judgment in return. You deserved better. You deserve a daughter who appreciates you instead of one who saw you as a resource to manage. The apology hung between us. I turned it over in my mind, looking for holes for manipulation, for the hooks that would lead back to requests for money. I found none, just exhaustion and shame, and what looked like genuine understanding. I forgive you, I said. Her shoulders dropped with relief. But Emily, things can't go back to how they were. I'm done being your safety net. Done funding your life while being treated as optional. You're working now. That's good. Keep doing that. Build your own stability, your own life without my money propping it up. I know. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I'm not asking you to start again. I'm not asking for anything except maybe. Can we have a relationship? Just like father and daughter. No money involved. Just, I miss you. I missed you before everything happened. I just didn't realize because I was so focused on what you could provide instead of who you were. I thought about that. Miss implied she'd once had me in a way that mattered. But maybe she had, before Martha died, before grief and obligation transformed our relationship into a transaction. Maybe there was something worth rebuilding. We can try, I said carefully. But slowly and with boundaries. I need to trust that you want me, not what I can give you. That'll take time. I understand. She smiled slightly. Your woodworking stuff, that's new. Started taking classes. I gestured toward the living room. Built a bookshelf. Can I see it? We walked together. I showed her the bookshelf, explaining the joints, the staining process. She listened like she actually cared, asked questions that suggested genuine interest. And for the first time in years, we had a conversation that wasn't about money or complaints or requests masked as small talk. We talked for an hour. She told me about the marketing job, how much she didn't know, how humbling entry-level work felt at 35. I told her about Paul, about the community center classes, about my plans to maybe travel somewhere small. The Oregon coast, maybe just me. That sounds nice, she said. You should definitely do it. At the door, we hugged, careful at first, then tighter. She felt smaller than I remembered, more human, less like the entitled villain I'd been carrying in my head. Thank you for giving me this, she whispered. I'll do better. I promise. I believe you. Surprising myself, I meant it. She drove away. I stood on my porch, watching her car disappear toward the highway that would take her back to Seattle. Back to the life she was finally building with her own hands. Inside, my house felt different, lighter somehow. The air moved easier. I made a sandwich, ate it by the river window, and thought about forgiveness versus reconciliation. About how you could offer the first without requiring the second. About how peace didn't mean erasing the past, just refusing to let it poison the future. My phone sat silent on the counter. The Facebook post was still there, archived proof of what had happened, but it felt distant now. Evidence of a battle I'd won, not through cruelty, but through truth. The bookshelf stood in my living room, solid and useful. The woodworking class meets tomorrow. Paul wanted to grab dinner Sunday. Small things, but they added up to a life I recognized. A life where I mattered not because of what I provided, but because of who I was. Emily would figure out her path, or she wouldn't. Either way, I'd be here, building things, reading books, taking walks, living for myself after years of living for someone who'd forgotten to value what that meant. The river outside kept flowing. The afternoon sun turned everything gold, and I felt finally like I'd come home to myself. Whatever came next will meet me here, standing in my own house, in my own life, with boundaries as solid as the bookshelf I'd built with my own hands. That felt like enough. More than enough. Exactly right. The provided text concludes the story and transitions into a sign-off typical of a video or podcast, including prompts for interaction. This story is a powerful narrative about setting boundaries and finding self-respect after years of enabling a difficult relationship. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.